What is up, Rangers and overall hockey fans? Thank you all so much for chiming in for this latest episode at Rangers Review. Myself alongside good friend Steven Statboy Steven, as you all know him by now. I can't believe we're already into the NHL season. The Rangers have played 4 games that we will be discussing today. The first, not really full week, I should say, but the first week since the season has started for us, since the last time we recorded. So 4 games in, that's what we'll be breaking down in today's live stream and episode. However, you're listening to us either live on YouTube or listening on replay, wherever you get your podcasts as well. But we'll be deep diving these 4 games, really everything that transpired for the Rangers there. How will they be looking going forward with their upcoming schedule? What were the key performances or lack thereof through these first 4 games? And a heavy update on Vitaly Krassov and everything there is to know on that trade situation. But before I get into anything else here, I want to say thank you all so much to everybody that's first chiming into the live stream here. That's not, say, listening to this on the podcast. If you are, thank you so much for that, no less. But Steven, how are you doing today, my man? Happy to have you here.
Good. Looking forward to this week. I'm flying to the Netherlands on Thursday to visit my mom who finished her chemo and meet my 5-month-old niece for the first time. So really looking forward to that.
Congratulations to your mom, by the way. I know that this is something that unfortunately dragged on a bit, as we know, but I'm really happy to see that she's doing well to this point, and I'm wishing her nothing but great health going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's awesome. It's also exciting for you as well to see your niece for the first time, you said, right? 5 months?
Yes. 5 months old, born in May. Born about 2 weeks before I moved to Dublin, but with the move to another country and starting a new job and finding a place, finding a new place, the last couple of months have been super busy. So I finally found some time to actually fly up there. Also, with the restrictions being eased up now, I don't need to get a test. So since I'm fully vaccinated, I can just fly to the Netherlands. All I need is what they call a locator form. So I just have to fill out, do you have a fever? Do you have a cough? Do you sneeze a lot? Whatever. So if you fill it all out, no, then it's fine. So flying to the Netherlands is a little bit easier. I'm going on Thursday and coming back on Tuesday. So it's a long weekend. And yeah, I've already gotten used to the Ranger games being at midnight, but on Thursday I'm going to be watching on at 1 a.m. again. So back to that again.
Sweet memories, am I right? Well, hopefully
I had a talk with someone on Twitter about that today who lives in Berlin, Nick Barson, I think. And he asked me, is it really that much of a difference? And you wouldn't expect it, but that 1 hour is huge. Watching at 1 a.m. or watching at midnight, it's huge. Going to bed at 2:30 or 3:30 when you get up at 7 is it's a big deal.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And thankfully for your case, you watch games that are still later in the day, but aren't to the same magnitude that what it once was when you were in the Netherlands. So, bite the bullet. Yeah. Hopefully they play a couple good games when you're there, especially for Thursday, and kind of go from there, right? But now I think it's a great segue to get into. And of course, folks, if you're watching this live, we'll be taking questions for the final 10 to 15 minutes of the segment like we usually do. So make sure to hold your questions for then. But getting into the first 4 games of the season for the Rangers, and Steven, you were accurate. You were 100% correct in your prediction. So Steven is leading the season predictions 1-0. I am the one with the nothing. If you guys don't know, well, we started last season when we started rolling out these weekly episodes. We would give predictions, for each week because we normally do a pod at least once a week with the upcoming games. Steven, you're in the early rain. How happy are you? How confident are you? Are you even surprised?
Listen, when we started with 1-1, I did not expect to win those final 2 games, but Laffy brought it home in Montreal and Panarin in Toronto. Or to be fair, Shesterkin brought it home in Toronto.
You're damn right he did. But it was good to see a slight monkey, if you will, get off Panarin's back early, along with Zibanejad. And we'll get into that. You're going to be covering that. But I'll start off breaking down game 1 briefly. Then Steven will get into game 2. I'll do game 3. And then Steven will recap game 4. And then we'll share our overall thoughts here on these first 4 games in which the Rangers went 2-1-1 so far. But game 1, not a fun game. I was in attendance, of course. It was the first game of the season for the Rangers in DC. Had a great time. It was a lot of fun going there. I was even fortunate to run into some people that actually recognized me, believe it or not. Shout out a good friend, and I believe David Newman, who's been a great supporter on the channel as well, who was actually somehow, some way noticed me and asked if I'm Tyler. And I said, yes, when I even had my like N95 mask on. I'm like, that takes skill. My goodness.
Mhm.
What do you do in your day-to-day life that you're able to point me out so easily? But no less, it was really cool. Always humbling feeling for sure, having people come up to me wherever I go for sporting events. So it does mean a lot. But that was by far, I would say, the biggest highlight of this game. Because other than that, the Rangers just, my natural concern going into this one was that they would be headhunting, that they would be all worried about physicality and getting these hits and having an absolute piss poor performance, penalties high because everyone's in the box from fighting all this stuff. And basically all of that happened without the fighting, which was most baffling of it all. You're telling me that, again, people argue this throughout the offseason, and I was joking. I said this on Twitter. I do not stand by this, but to think that a team drastically changed everything this past offseason directly in hand with the Tom Wilson incident. And again, I'm exaggerating, of course. It was just, that was kind of, the final stone, if you will, before it really made Dolan realize, okay, that changes need to be had, regardless, that you don't even target Tom Wilson at all in this game, and the refs were even protecting him. It was absolutely ridiculous. I don't believe Ryan Reeves and Tom Wilson were on the ice at the same time once in this one. My memory serves me correct. Just an
12
absolute...
seconds. 12 seconds.
12 seconds? Of course, you wouldn't know that. Thank you, Stat Boy. But literally, other than that, they were never on the ice together. We saw nothing. We saw some scrums that they then threw out as like roughing penalties. I think one was on Truba. I forget who the other was on. Sammy Blais was high flying. He was one of the most actual noticeable people all game long. And while he had some boneheaded penalties himself, I did appreciate that Blais was actually trying to make things happen all game, because between Artemi Panarin and Mika Zibanejad, neither of them having shots in a game for the first time since Panarin became a New York Ranger, for that duo to none of them to have shots on goal. That wasn't fun to watch in attendance. I got Caps fans behind me because I'm sitting nosebleeds dead center, like diehard fans. This guy, we sit down right away, and, he says, oh, you guys are going to get whooped tonight. And then me and the person I was with, we say, yeah, we hope so, to kind of throw him off. And you should have saw the face that this guy had. He could not believe that we took from him saying that, really insulting us, to embracing it. He didn't know how to respond. He's like, what do you mean? And then we replied in the sense of, well, then we get a better draft pick. It all works out in the end. And so we were going back and forth. He was yelling, come on, over chicken. Come on, Bubba. This guy was literally a character, and he actually made the game somewhat entertaining. But going on to what actually happened here, the Rangers got whooped. They lost 5-1. They had a little opportunities all game long. They had a good start to the game, I would say, in the first period, and then it just completely trickled down due to endless penalties on their part. They had a total of 6 penalties in this game, and Alexander Ovechkin and the Capitals execute on half them, as you would expect them to. So the Caps won for 500, 3 for 6 on the power play, and the Rangers won 1 for 5. The only goal was by future, and I'm going to say this confidently, captain of the New York Rangers, and Chris Kreider, doing what he does best, getting a nice tip and deflection goal in front. I believe he still leads the league in those type of goals in front since he came into the league. He's been notorious for that, and he's continued that over the past couple of games as well. But Kreider had the lone goal for the Rangers here. The Rangers out-hit the Capitals 27-12. So, it's all about that grip, baby. It's all about that grip. It's the only thing that they actually had going. Block shots 8-15 in favor of the Capitals. And yeah, just overall, Georgiev was in net, did not look sharp. That's the only game that he has been in net to this point. The Rangers didn't really help him out too much, however, being stuck on either. Pardon me?
Face-offs?
Face-offs, the Rangers were superior in this game by a large margin. They were 61-39. So something that we've been emphasizing a lot for them to do better on face-offs. So far, so good. Not recently, that you'll get into in their most recent game. But again, I think injuries go in hand with that. But the Rangers dominated the face-off circle. They had 24 shots to the Capitals 27, but absolutely nothing to contribute offensively whatsoever. Just really a shit show of a game. Everything that could have went wrong. There was zero structure, zero discipline, and it really gave me flashbacks of Rangers early last season under David Quinn. The only thing that I will say I appreciated the most out of this one, outside of what I already discussed, was that there wasn't these continuous line changes, mixing up the lines, micromanaging every 5 minutes. That's something that was not apparent basically all game long, and I did appreciate that, and that's something I'm going to continue to appreciate under Gallant. But between a power play that I don't like with having too many righties on the first power play, especially in that right dot, and too many lefties on the second, that we've said every single week for how many months? Literally all year long, Steven, we have been saying this exact issue. It's still holding true to an extent now. Just a bad game overall for the Rangers. Again, I'm not putting too much stock into it, however, because they've had brighter spots since then. But yeah, recap in a nutshell: Rangers lost game 1 5-1. Now, Steven, take it away with game 2.
Yeah, game 2, the home opener, of course, for the Rangers, the debut of Nils Lundqvist, the reveal of the Rod Gilbert patch that the Rangers will be wearing all season long in honor of Mr. Ranger, special warm-up jerseys, overall the ceremonial puck drop with Rod Gilbert's wife was beautiful, and then the game started, and Rangers being Rangers, they gave someone his first NHL goal. Jacob Peterson, of course, 5th-round pick of the Dallas Stars. And I think Radek Faksa scored the second one for Dallas, and it didn't look good. But then luckily the Rangers came back. Adam Fox with a really good block of Capo Caco in front. He didn't get an assist on that, but he was in the Kreider role, so to speak. Bounced off of the skate of a defenseman. And then Chris Kreider tied it up. Chris Kreider, who had 3 goals in his first 3 games, so that was a great start for him.
Yes, it was.
And then unfortunately, we lost it in overtime. The shot, I think it was a shot by Panarin that bounced back, and Mira Heiskanen had a 1-on-1. Great finish by Mira Heiskanen, one of my favorite non-Rangers in the league, to be perfectly honest. Also one of the few non-Rangers I have a jersey of. The Rangers got a point. Face-offs for 50-50, which is interesting. They lose game 1 when they're superior on the face-off dot. Game 2, the face-offs are 50-50, and they take it to overtime. And then, of course, as we get to in a minute, games 3 and 4, they lose the face-off battle, but they still win those games. So, and the last one I'll get to in a minute because that's legendary. We had a game against Dallas, unfortunate loss in overtime, but good bounce back, in my opinion, from the 5-1 loss against Washington.
Yeah, good bounce back indeed. It was unfortunate, however, in overtime, a lot of people were pinpointing at Panarin, and I was to a certain extent. It was a little bit of kind of a bonehead play. I'm not sure if he was trying to make a pass right through the center of the ice in the offensive zone. It kind of ricocheted. I think Heiskanen almost like pickpocketed him, then went around him right away to make himself streaking along the side to get the breakaway, and he didn't miss, of course. Got a beautiful shot off and beat Igor. Igor said in postgame they should have had that, and Igor was not at fault in this game. If anything, he's the only reason why the Rangers were in it as tight as they were. But no less, at least to get a point was important for the Rangers going into game 3, in which it was the first time in quite a while since they were actually in the bubble that they are back in Canada now, facing off against the Montreal Canadiens. Alexi Lafreniere's parents in attendance for the first time in Lafreniere's career as an NHL hockey player since he's been drafted, because if you guys don't know, a lot of stuff has been happening over the past year and a half now, so people haven't necessarily been able to travel too well, especially coming from Canada. But no less, Rangers back in Montreal. They are without Carey Price, that being the Habs, unfortunately wishing him the best. And you can definitely tell that the Habs have had their struggles to start the season in hand with not having, that backbone, that being Carey, not just a great goaltender as it is, but also being a huge voice and a huge leader in that locker room and on the ice. You can tell that's making a difference early for them, even without deep of an offensive lineup that they've had. But the Rangers go into this one and they end up winning. And this was a tight game for sure, but the Rangers started to blow it open a little bit in the third. At least getting that empty net goal was huge, but they won 3-1 in total. The Habs outshot the Rangers 32-24. Faceoffs were won by the Habs 61-39. So really polar opposite from what we saw from game 1, at least against the Capitals. The Rangers got the lone goal on special teams because the Habs had a couple bad penalties themselves. They had 4, and the Rangers were able to execute on one of them thanks to, Chris Kreider. That was, in fact, his 3rd goal of the season, as you alluded to, Steven. Big goal for Kreider there on the power play, assisted by Zibanejad and Panarin. And then you get into the 1 goal for the Habs that came in the 3rd period was Jonathan Drewen, who's had a great start to the season. Wishing him the best. If you guys don't know, he was on an extended leave of absence this past year, dealing with some personal issues with anxiety and depression, and mental health is, of course, an important thing, and something that I think gets really overlooked or, brushed under the rug a lot in major sports like hockey. So I think it's great to see Drewen overcome his personal battles and adversities and have a good start to the season. But then getting into the 3rd period, that's where, the hometown boy and Alexi Lafreniere, former 1st overall pick, scores an absolutely beautiful goal to give the Rangers the lead, and they would hold it. Kevin Rooney ends up getting the empty netter, and the Rangers win this one, and a huge win for them. They had 18 blocks to the Habs 13. The Rangers did not out-hit the Habs in this one. They got out-hit actually 31-23. So grit, not as much of a factor, but they still got the win in the end. And from all the games we've seen so far, their biggest win to this point, their most kind of, comfortable win out of all of them, even though no wins have really looked comfortable for the Rangers yet. But in total, Lafreniere, you could tell he had a pep in his step. He had 5 shots on goal, had himself the goal scored himself. He did give up. He had one little bad penalty, but outside of that, he had 3 hits as well. He just looked great all night long. And I really hope that we see that energy from Laffy more consistently throughout the season. I know it's not necessarily easy, especially for him going into Montreal, that being the area in which he's from, having his parents there. It was bound to go right for him. It kind of felt textbook, if you will. But I really hope that he builds off that and can get that on a little bit more of a consistent basis, kind of that drive a little bit, if it makes any sense on what I'm saying here for the remainder of the season and beyond. A lot of good production from the Rangers here, even though there was some unfortunate issues, and that was to Kaapo Kakko. Kakko was injured in this one. He ended up being pulled from the game, and he's on the IR currently for at least a week. Very unfortunate. I'm not exactly sure what Kakko's injury is. I know it's upper body. I don't know the details on that to this point, but it doesn't look like it's going to be anything long-term. So wishing Kakko the best and a speedy recovery, because as we know, the Rangers already are lacking some right wing depth, and that's why we're going to get into fairly shortly on Vitaly Kravtsov once we get over all the stuff that's been going on with the Rangers, because man, all it took was just a couple games for the Rangers to use some depth, right? And unfortunately for that situation, it's not looking pretty whatsoever. But Rangers again win this one. Game 3, they win this 3-1. Loved a lot what I saw from this game. And of course, Igor Shesterkin doing what he does best, saving 24-25 shots and having a stellar start to the season that continued going into their most recent game that Steven's going to touch on now.
Yeah, going into Toronto, coming off a win in Montreal, which is not easy. Going into Toronto with Austin Matthews back in the lineup for the Leafs. A lot of good players, of course, on that team. John Tavares as well, and Mitch Marner. Nylander. It's a lot of firepower up front, and it was noticeable. The Rangers being without Ryan Strome, that we didn't mention yet, but he was on the COVID protocol, so he didn't even travel to Montreal for Game 3. Being without Ryan Strome and without Kaapo Kakko, the Rangers were struggling in this one. Part of that is the face-off. We keep coming back to this, but it's been a weird season for the Rangers. They have won the face-off battle once, and that's the only game they lost in regulation. This game is almost historic. On the penalty kill, they won only 10% of their face-offs. And that's ridiculous. Mika Zibanejad scored the first goal for the Rangers, of course, off a turnover. Who were the other forwards that were on the ice for that goal? Ryan Reeves and Dryden Hunt, I think. Because Zibanejad came on the ice. He was the first one to come on the ice in the line change and, unassisted, scores the first goal. Zibanejad, by the way, has 5 points in his first 4 games. He might not be very noticeable in each of the 4 games, but last season it took him 16 games to get to 4 points, and now he already has 5 after 4 games. So good start for the center. And then, of course, that overtime was amazing. We often complain about 3-on-3 overtime, how it's not real hockey and it's a little bit gimmicky. And I agree. The first minute was very. The first minute, if you show that to people, it's a good case made against 3-on-3 overtime, because teams are circling back, not taking any risks. But then the final 2.5 minutes, oh boy, breakaways back and forth. Shesterkin 20 yards out of his net, making a save. Jacob Trouba preventing a goal by Austin Matthews with an open net. And then the one faceoff they win at the end leads to the game-winning goal by Panarin. But it's a miracle they won this game.
Absolute miracle.
The faceoff percentage for the Rangers was 24.1%. To illustrate how bad the Rangers were, faceoff wins in last night's game, the Rangers 13, Austin Matthews 13, and John Tavares 15. So those two either tied or outplayed the Rangers as a team in faceoffs. And I looked it up. Since 2000, this was the 8th worst faceoff percentage in a game for a team in a single game. The lowest faceoff percentage ever, or since 2000, was the New York Islanders in 2009 against Buffalo, 17%. Then there's the Canadians in there, the Florida Panthers. Anyway, but this is the lowest faceoff percentage since the year 2000, where a team actually won the game.
And the Rangers had absolutely no business being in this game after the first period. They had
no business. They had no business even taking it to overtime.
No, they didn't. And this is something I touched on briefly. I was actually discussing on the channel, on Hot Take Hockey's channel yesterday. If you guys follow him on YouTube, make sure you do, for all great hockey content. He was live streaming the game. I hopped on for a little post game, and I was saying to him how, the only reason why the Rangers even got anywhere was because of Igor. But offensively, for the Rangers, they just offensively and defensively, they just had no mojo. After the first period, I was liking what I'm seeing. The Rangers were getting a lot of constant pressure in the Leafs zone, which led them to their lone goal and Zibanejad in regulation. They had some other good opportunities as well, but fell short. And then really from that point on, once you got towards the latter half of the first period into the set, it was a complete night and day difference from how the Leafs came out in the second period versus the first. Just a complete 180, if you will, not favoring the Rangers. And they held on by just a thread. This is a team that got exposed both offensively, defensively. That literally the Leafs did everything possible to win this one. And they ran into, really, you could argue, a top 5 goaltender already in this game, and that is Igor Shesterkin. So we have to take a moment to really appreciate Igor and talk about shades of Henrik Lundqvist, is what I saw last night.
Before I want to start with this because, again, this was his 50th game, and I know 50 is not technically a milestone because 100 is a milestone, but his 50th game, Shesterkin has played 7 games where he made at least 40 saves in his first 50. Only 3 goalies in NHL history since they started tracking saves have more than Henrik Lundqvist. George Gardner had 9. Marv Edwards and Peter McDuffie have 8. And then there's 5 goalies with 7, including Igor Shesterkin and Tim Thomas. I think Henrik Lundqvist had 6. So it just shows you how much they rely on Shesterkin early on in his career. And there was some criticism about his contract extension over the summer, if you remember,
which I never agreed with. The only concern with Igor has been his health. That's been the only thing you could really pinpoint.
As long as we are in the month of October, everything we say comes with a little asterisk of small sample size. Yes. It's still early. I get it. I get it. However, if you start the season, if before the season started, you would have told me Shesterkin is gonna play 3 games and put up a .949 save percentage, I'd sign up for that easily. And he carried this team to a win in Toronto, to a win in Montreal, and carried them to overtime in Dallas for that 1 point we got out of that game. And yeah, he just looks sharp, and I think this is just like a guess from my end, but it feels like Gallant told him clearly, you are the number 1. You are the starter on this team.
Yeah.
So there's right.
Remember, and there's the comfortability factor because GQ never gave that. It was always so up in the air. Yeah,
exactly. Last season, there was a time early in the season where Quinn openly said that there's no clear starter. It's just Shesterkin and Georgiev, and then Kincaid played a couple of games, and boy, it was a mess. But giving Shesterkin the extension, telling him he's the starter, giving him that confidence. I mean, it's still early, but seems to have worked.
And I think what's also really fun to think about is Igor throughout his career has not had too heavy of a workload, which could pay dividends for the Rangers here. Because let's not forget, when he was in the KHL, he was dominant, but he split a good portion of his time when he was playing the KHL and his goaltending tandem. So now him coming to the Rangers here, he does have potentially a season pushing north of 55, 60 plus games where he is in fact the starter, I don't necessarily see him gain gas to the likelihood that you would assume in a day and age where tandems are the normality, knowing that he really hasn't had a crazy workload to this point in his career in comparison to, let's just use Hank as a comparison, right? Hank's had some really, really big seasons where he's played easily 60, 65 plus games, but still, Igor is in a position right now where you're going to get the best out of him if you're going to ride high on him because you don't have that comfortability or the trust with your Georgievs or your Kincaids of the world. Okay, bank on him because he's already proving early into this year, and I do believe it's going to continue, that he knows he is the number one guy here, and that confidence is going to be radiating off of him throughout the remainder of the year. So between him not having that workload like he's had in the KHL, maybe it's an adjustment. Maybe we do see him go through his highs and lows throughout the year, which would not be surprising whatsoever, just like any other player. But as long as he's more consistent than not consistent, then the Rangers will be primed for success. They had no business being 2-1-1 after their first week of games. So, absolutely no business whatsoever.
So to touch on Lundqvist quickly, in his rookie season, he played 53 games, which is a lot for a rookie. And then his second season, he had 70. His third season, he had 72. His fourth season, he had 70. His fifth season, he had 73. And then 68, 62, 43 in a 48 game season in 2014.
The whole year.
And then 63 again. And then 2014-15 is where he had that injury where he was hit in the throat. Remember that?
Talbot came along.
Yep. Talbot came in. He played 46 then. But after that, 65, 57, 63, and then 2018-19 down to 52. And then 2019-20 is where Shesterkin took over. He played 30. But Henrik Lundqvist played 70-plus games 3 seasons in a row. Or 4 seasons in a row.
And let's clarify that the NHL was different back then. And, Hank's early days of his prime, that is where that was more of the norm versus tandems now. But regardless, the point is that to see Hank do it to that level, and I know that you shouldn't be comparing people to Hank, but there's good reason as to why Igor has been deemed as the prince here, right? The next man up. And I do believe he is going to be in a prime spot where, we're going to see him for at least 60 games this year, maybe pushing 70, depending on what exactly you're getting out of Georgiev. If you don't have that comfortability, that confidence, if your backup is the sole reason why you're losing games, then hey, buckle up, get on those skates, Igor. We need you more often than not. And that's something that won't be surprising at all if we see that continue throughout the remainder of the year.
Speaking of Henrik Lundqvist, how nice is it to see him on TV?
Oh my God. Just to see that hair and that face. Patrick Sharp thought he was the sharpest looking guy on TV. No pun intended. Sorry, Patrick, but Hank is here and he's beautiful.
And it's been 15 years, but Valiquette has finally done it. He made Henrik Lundqvist his sidekick.
He did.
Instead of the other way around.
He did. And shout out Valley, because I know that he tweeted at you recently when he was on the ice. He called you out.
I posted a tweet about the top 5 save percentage for Ranger goalies against Toronto, and he was
because Valley was in there.
He was ranked second behind Georgiev, and he tweeted a video of him stick handling a puck, and that was pretty cool.
And I'm glad we brought this up because let's talk about Georgie for a second. He is someone that hasn't done very well against a lot of teams early in his career, but Toronto has been that one kind of anomaly. He has had the upper hand by far. So the fact that Gallant wasn't even really that considerate, what it would seem, to go to Georgiev here against Toronto in Toronto really is proving something further, as we've discussed, with who exactly is your number one.
But certain goalies have like that one team.
Oh, absolutely. Where Jimmy Howard and MSG. Let's start with that.
Dominic Hasek mode. If the Buffalo Sabres ever become a contender, I know it's a long shot, but if they ever become a contender again, I just want Mackenzie Skepsky to come out of retirement just for those games.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah.
It's another example. And like you said, Jimmy Howard at Madison Square Garden.
And he grew up a diehard Rangers fan. So there was sentiment behind that,
Yeah. And then, as you said, Georgiev in Toronto, it's interesting to see those matchups where a goalie just completely dominates one team, and then against the rest of the league, it's like, eh.
It's really interesting. It's like anything else, like in other sports too, whether it be a certain quarterback against a specific team, or for baseball, there'd be a certain pitcher that's just so dominant against one certain lineup because he always
Yeah.
feels he has the upper hand on. It's really fun to look at that.
I think the thing we touched on earlier, where Gallant was telling Shesterkin he's the number one goalie, he's the starter. There's no question about it. I think it also has a positive effect on Georgiev because there's no, there are no expectations. He's a backup now. There's no 1A and 1B tandem. We have a clear starter. We have a clear backup.
Hopefully that benefits Georgiev, if at all, just knowing exactly what his role is.
I hope it does, because I don't think he's going to be a Ranger after the season. He's an RFA next summer, and
neither do
I don't see the Rangers giving him another deal. They're going to trade his rights in the summer.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think Georgie will be here much longer, but until we get to that point, we got to root for the guy and hope for the best. So, Georgiev, wishing you well. He wasn't at fault for every goal that happened in DC, but he definitely wasn't a positive in that game, if you ask me, even though I know Gallant said that, oh, none of this was his fault. I'm like, okay, we don't need to go there. All right. We just started the season, Gallant. Please stop lying to us blatantly in front of our face. I don't appreciate that. But let's get into now a fun statistic that was actually just tweeted out recently from New York Rangers Stats and Info, talking about hits. Let's talk about grit, baby, right? Because that's what matters most for this Rangers team. Nothing else matters. Got to talk about that grit. Rangers registered 33 hits in the win. It's in the win against the Leafs, which was the most since March 9th of 2021 against the Penguins, of which they had 58 in that game. I remember that game. This season, the Rangers have 115 hits, the most through the first 4 games of the season since they had 126 through 4 games in the 2015-2016 year. And the Rangers stand alone at the top of first in the league at hits so far through their 4 games. So yeah, they're throwing their body around, and that was something that I noticed right away in the Capitals game as well. They were very aggressive. Again, we didn't see the fights, but I will throw out there, because I don't believe I mentioned it before, Gary Bettman was in attendance. You could clearly tell that was probably a heavy factor into things on, not getting too messy, which is it really ticked me off, to be quite honest with you, because I really want to see a Reeves and Wilson fight, who won in that scenario. It kind of was a match made in heaven just to fall because of Gary Bettman. I was looking for him too. I want to have some choice words with Gary, but I couldn't find him. He was in one of the boxes somewhere. But getting back to what has happened with the Rangers, they've been very aggressive. That's been noted. But now transitioning from aggression to this overall production of this lineup, we've noticed on the faceoff dot that they struggled lately to an extent, and that's strictly in hand with losing guys like Ryan Strome. If you guys don't know, Strome is currently out. I believe he has COVID, or he's just on the COVID list. At least he's sick to some degree. And Kako is out for 7 days. I don't know what day we're at right now. I know we're a couple days in a race, so Kako should be back fairly soon. But these are 2 guys that, when you lose key pieces in your top 6 like this, Filipino, I know you said you don't believe Filipino will ever be in a position where he's worthy of being that 2C. Again, I think you're jumping the gun a little bit, given we've only seen a couple of games. That's just my opinion, though, Steven. I'm not going to put too much stock in it yet. I do not think Filipino is going to be top center in his prime, and I think his peak will be a 2C at some point, whether it's with the Rangers or not. But he didn't do anything that really was flashy or, wowed me during Ryan Strome being away with the team to this point. Kako, him being out, really unfortunate as well. So you see guys like Barclay Goodrow having to play in this Goodrow, however you pronounce his name, in the top 6. And yeah, you could tell that the Rangers were getting very reliant at times with this Zibanejad, the Kreiders of the world, and the Panarins. It's something that we saw with DQ, especially in scenarios where they weren't playing well. But I understand from Gallant's standpoint these past couple games why he's juggled things up a little bit more, because of, one, you see endless penalties that are continuing to happen that needs to get shorn up sooner than later. This is not looking good. I hate when it's a game where it's more special teams dominant than it is 5-on-5, because you just don't build structure. And it's hard for a team to build structure when they have a new head coaching system in as it is. Now you're throwing in all these adversities when not even being able to play 5-on-5 for more than a couple minutes. That's not a recipe for success. So the Rangers have looked very sloppy, in my opinion. They've had some really good periods, but they have by no means looked strong for the entirety of a game for the most part. Even against the Habs, I did not feel that they simply dominated every period. I don't think that they did at all. So, Steven, kind of what is your thoughts right now on how the Rangers are managing this lineup now and going forward for the next couple games, still without guys like Ryan Strome and Kako, and also the call-ups that they've had because of these injuries or illnesses, even though that he hasn't had playing time yet, that being a Morgan Barron.
Yeah, I'll touch on Morgan Barron first. I was happy to see that he was called up. In my opinion, he should have been the first call up, not Greg McKegg, but it is what it is. But then he's called up and he's not playing. I don't understand why you fly a kid to Toronto just to sit at the press box. I really hope he does get a chance against Nashville, because this team needs a little bit more structure, as you said. Hopefully Strome will be back against the Nashville Predators. I'm just like with Filipino, I'm just not convinced he is the guy for Artemi Panarin to play with. I just don't think their styles match well. That has nothing to do with it only being 3 games, it only being 4 games, whatever. No, I just don't think he is the type of center that Panarin plays well with. But yeah, I expected Morgan Barron to center the third line when Hedl was moved up. It didn't happen, so hopefully we see that later on. And in terms of the hits, I just don't understand this fascination with hits. And teams that are bad on faceoffs tend to have more hits because you can only hit players when you don't have the puck.
Bingo. More hits usually equates to lack of puck possession.
You're chasing the puck instead of carrying it.
Yep.
And I just don't understand how the Rangers were flaunting it like it was some magical statistic. It's the Rangers are 2-1-1, yes, but it's just not sustainable with the way they're playing. And you have a guy, Chris Kreider, who scores 3 goals in 3 games, and it's not even highlighted. Instead, we get highlights on their Twitter account of Ryan Lindgren leading the league in hits. I don't care about hits. You have Chris Kreider second in the league in goals. Highlight that. That's something that'll help you win. Mm-hmm. Chris Kreider's goal got us a point against the Dallas Stars. Chris Kreider's goal helped us beat the Montreal Canadiens. And I'm not saying hitting is completely useless, but hitting in a vacuum, like the hitting stat in a vacuum, to me is useless.
The context of the hitting is what's most important.
There should be a hitting plus minus, and I've said this for years.
Oh, that's an interesting take.
Where you look at a hit, if it results in a turnover, that's a plus. If you hit an opponent and your team does not retrieve the puck, that's a minus. Because if it doesn't lead to you retrieving the puck, you're putting yourself out of position. And one of the goals, the goal the Montreal Canadiens scored against the Rangers, Trouba and Miller, for instance, were both out of position. And it's because they're chasing the puck carrier both at the same time, and it just leads to open ice in front of the goalie. Hitting should be a more sophisticated stat than just raw hits. So if you're telling me the Rangers lead the league in hits, my response to that is great. Then I guess we are bottom of the league in terms of puck possession.
Yeah,
that's basically what that tells me. And I know there's a little bit more nuance to it, of course, but
yeah,
to me, hitting is not necessarily a positive.
It's not a positive when you've seen how this Rangers team has played so far. Let's put it that way. If the Rangers have, say, we're 4-0 or 3-1, or regardless of the record is actually, but if they were dominant, take how the Leafs performed last night at the time of recording this, right? If they played like the Leafs and let in hits, I think the Rangers played a great game. They just fell short. Unfortunate that they were not able to really even buy a goal because they ran into a hot goaltender, which again, for the Rangers' sake, was Igor Shesterkin. So the context is what matters most here. And I agree with you. Hits is a stat that you should not look at and be like, oh my God, we're the top in hits. Right? I'm being sarcastic every single time I say, it's all about that grip, baby. It's a joke, just a reference to how the Rangers operate this offseason. But it's important also to have that aggression. I'm in favor of hits as long as it's not going to result in, say, maybe you go for the hit, but the puck gets away because you pinched up, and now it's a 2-on-1, the opposite end. Like, that's where I have an issue. That's where I'm thinking Jacob Trouba missed the hip check. Okay, all right, now there's an odd man rush down the ice. Like, that is what you should not allow to happen. But you can tell that the aggressiveness is directly in hand with guys that the Rangers have now acquired, not just with the guys on the roster. Barclay Goodrow currently leads the team in hits. You have guys like Ryan Reeves, who when he's on the ice, oh my goodness, you heard the absolute entire Capital One arena in DC shake every single time Reeves laid out a hit. It sounded different. It reminded me as if you have a big slugger coming up to the plate in baseball and he cracks a home run. The crack off the bat hits different. When Reeves hits someone, it sounds and hits different. So you can tell that he has that aggression when he's out there for sure, and he does make an impact. I haven't disliked anything from Reeves really so far. Just would like to see him get in a fight sooner than later, to be honest with you, when it's warranted, not when it's after the game, like a Brendan Lemieux type move. But to really wrap up discussion on hits here, it's important to look at how exactly they're being utilized. If we talk a week from now, the Rangers have a piss poor week, do not dominate in any facets of the game, but they're leading hits, then that'll tell you that's strictly because they're trailing, try and get the puck because they don't have it in possession. Now going from...
So last thing I'll say about this, what's more telling to me, and I know that shots on goal is also not a stat that tells the whole story, but to me, it tells a more complete story than hits. The game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Rangers were outshot 17-2 in the second period.
Yep.
That you can lead, you can out-hit your opponent all you want, but you need to generate offense because no team is going to get rewarded for hitting the most. It's not fantasy hockey. If you play fantasy hockey and hits are rewarded, go draft Radko Gudas and Chris Russell, because those guys will get you the points in fantasy hockey when you get points for hits and blocked shots and that kind of stuff. But if you want to win games, you need to do more than just hitting. And man, Igor Shesterkin really, really carried us yesterday. And the last thing I'll say quickly about their goalie, Jack Campbell. I noticed this. I never noticed this before, but every time he made a save, the crowd was chanting "soup."
Yeah.
Fucking awesome.
Exactly.
Never noticed it before.
And they have two players that have the nickname Soup, actually, because it's him and then Ilya Mikheyev.
Okay.
Yeah, Mikheyev's had the nickname Soup because he did, I believe, was on a commercial or did like a sponsorship deal. I think it might have been with Campbell's or something too. But he known as soon as he came to North America, he was doing like soup ads. So they got two soups, not one. So they're eating right over there in Toronto. Okay, so before we get into Krassov, which is going to take us the remainder of this episode, before we get into Q&A, one final topic that I want to discuss for the Rangers now, before let's actually get into as well their upcoming schedule here, because actually, you know what, we'll wait till the very end for the upcoming schedule. Ignore that I said that, because that's how we usually operate. But going into the next couple of games, there are a couple things that absolutely need to change, that I hope change at least. I know it's early in the season. I'm not trying to nitpick and critique this team too hard at all, but glaring issues are them on special teams, both offensively and defensively. They need to get out of the box. Okay. This is something that already early, they're giving up at least 3 power plays to the opposing team each game. And when it comes to offensively being on the power play, they've just looked absolutely abysmal. Outside of Chris Kreider, there's nothing going. Mika hasn't been able to do anything that left dot yet. He's gotten robbed sometimes, but he's also had some bad shots. I don't like anything about the power play, and I hope it changes when Ryan Strome's back. I don't want Strome to be centering the first power play just for him to be in the right dot. It's frustrating.
You know what I like about the power play?
What about it?
That the second unit gets more than 15 seconds.
Oh, I know. I was gonna say that. I noticed that right away in the first game. Yes, right around the minute mark or so. When there's a minute left in the power play, they are actually pretty even. From most of them.
I know you need to have an opportunity to go for a line change. Like if you have sustained pressure in the offensive zone, you're not going to put your second unit on the fly. But once the puck is cleared, if there's 1 minute and 10 seconds left, Quinn would leave the first unit on, and Gallant's putting out the second unit. And it's refreshing. And this is something I've harped on this last season. You remember this. I brought this up several times. So it's refreshing to see that at least. The power play is not clicking yet, but I'm happy that we have 2 units that we can rely on.
I'm happy that we have 2 units we can rely on as well. My only critique again is having right-handedness in the right dot or left-handedness in the left dot. It has proven not to work to this point. It proved not to work more often than not last year. Why should it be any different now? That's my big thing. When Kakko's back and healthy, I want to see him on either one or two in that right dot. Okay, that's all I'm asking. Him or Lafreniere, either one. However they want to go about things. I just absolutely despise seeing too much of the same handedness because you can clearly tell when Strom's on the right dot, he's too hesitant. Or
well, it happened with
Panarin
Panarin in one of the, I don't remember which game. It happened with Panarin in one of the games where he was on the right side of the power play and the puck was played towards him. And he wanted to get the shot off, but the angle is just wrong.
Exactly. It's frustrating. Like, if you're gonna, like, let me put it this way: righty and lefties being on their proper sides makes perfect sense, especially in an odd man rush situation, right? Where you're just getting that tap in. But how the Rangers are cycling the puck, just like any other team on special teams, you're looking for that big shot. You're looking for the one-timer. And everyone already knows that they can look at, say, Strome or whoever the righty is in the right dot to a different degree than how they're looking at Zibanejad. They know that they should favor Mika, similar to how everyone knows that they should favor Ovechkin. The difference is Ovechkin is arguably the best goal scorer of all time. He probably will go down as such. Mika isn't to that level yet, so you can't depend on him to simply get an absolute wicked shot off every single opportunity, and there's going to be multiple guys in the lane. So that's something I hope changes. I just want to see more diversity there with the handedness. I think it's going to benefit them because it hasn't proven to benefit the Rangers at this point with how they're currently operating, and also defensively needs to get shorn up as well. Not like, what I'm seeing from some of these guys as well. Tenorti was an absolute dreadful first game. I know we haven't seen him much. Patrick Nemeth is just there. I haven't seen too much upsides. Trouba has left me scratching my head at times. Miller, from what I've seen, has looked okay. Nothing stellar, but okay. Lundqvist definitely had his really, really bad situation in the Dallas game, but it was just as bad of a pass as it was him mishandling it. So they both went in hand there. It's going to get shorn up. I'm really not too concerned about it. But more than anything, I just want the Rangers to get out of the penalty box. Again, lousy penalties that they're taking. They need to shore that up. Let's get some 5-on-5 for extended time, please.
Yeah, and Jarred Tenorti is the perfect example that size isn't everything on defense. The guy is 6'6", and look, you can talk size all you want, but
Dylan McIlrath X.
If you ask anyone, do you want to play Jarred Tenorti or Nils Lundqvist or Jarred Tenorti or Zach Jones? How many people aside from Jarred Tenorti's family are going to say Jarred Tenorti?
Mm-hmm.
It's just size alone is not enough, and
no.
I can't believe
size doesn't do anything if you can get beat like that. And that's something that, Trouba has gone better at. But remember his first year with the Rangers too. I felt like, oh my goodness, every single time a winger for the opposing team was streaking along the side, Trouba misses the check. And then, that's that. Like, he never stood a chance.
We still have Libor Hayek on the team.
I know.
Anyway.
Let's get on to a very important discussion here before we get to questions, and then previewing the next couple games for the Rangers before we have our next episode. And that is Vitaly Krassov. And this was a great article that broke earlier today from Arthur Staple through The Athletic. They do have a paywall. So again, if you guys don't have The Athletic, we're really going to tell you all you need to know here. But Arthur Staple is now covering the Rangers going forward. Now that Rick Carpinello, longtime beat writer for the Rangers, is retiring, and he was part of The Athletic. So out with Rick, in with Arthur. I'm already liking what I'm seeing. I have to be honest with you. Arthur covers the Islanders usually, but now he's going to be doing both. And he came out with this piece on Vitaly, and really the bad looking relationship him and Chris Drury have had since right around October of 2019. Drury during his time also with the Wolfpack. Remember that as well. And there were a couple quotes here that were really highlighted from what sources have indicated, but I'm going to read a couple to you here, guys, in case you're unaware on just the situation right now. Because if you don't know, Vitaly has said, from what reports have indicated, that he's willing to even play on an AHL team of an opposing team, just for the sake of getting dealt. He's willing to basically do whatever opposing team asks for when it comes to negotiations and getting traded, which shows you that this is more than how he would be in the minors versus him just basically being done with the Rangers. And they're both completely at fault here again. And I want to make that clear, but definitely they're both at fault. According According to multiple league sources, the friction between Kravtsov and Chris Drury dates back to October 2019. As I mentioned, let's see. Sources say that when Kravtsov went to retrieve his gear and say his goodbyes to the Wolfpack teammates and staff, and this was the first time he did this, leaving the Wolfpack, exercising his clause that he had to go back to Europe, Drury told Kravtsov that he'd quote-unquote quit on the team. So that isn't a good look to begin with. Then going on a little bit further.
He did that in front of the team, right?
There isn't clarification if he has. Chris could have said it to him on the side. But it says when he went to retrieve his gear and say goodbye to his teammates. So it could have been. It very well could have been. And I don't know. There isn't further detail than this.
Anyway, it could be a one-on-one thing, but still it's
and there's more to this though.
Hold on. So I want to quickly touch on this before we move on to the next quote. I don't understand the issue with we know how it all unfolded afterwards, but at that time, in that moment, how can you as the assistant general manager have a problem with a player activating a European assignment clause that he negotiated for, that the Rangers gave him? It's
hypocritical. If you're going to critique it that way, then don't make the clause even
there is a difference. Yeah, there is a difference between Kravtsov now refusing to report and Kravtsov 2 years ago activating a European assignment clause that was given to him during contract negotiations.
Agreed. And that's
and that's
if you don't want a bad situation.
If you don't want a player to use a clause, don't give it to him.
Yep, I couldn't have said it better. And going further in this article, there were already concerns from the Rangers throughout this entire process for the past couple of years on Krassov and his conditioning. This is something that the Rangers have had issues with Vitaly in the past, and it's held true going into this year. Again, he dealt with injury this year as well.
I remember a situation 2 years ago where there were reports about his heart rate being too low.
Yeah, I remember that too.
It sounded like such a nonsense complaint because heart rate is like hits.
Yeah,
it's like plus minus. Yeah,
maybe there was more to it though, that they've been emphasizing the conditioning so much.
Yeah, of course. And now 2 years later, it looks like there was more behind it. But at the time, it was just reported as Vitaly Kravtsov has a lower heart rate than his teammates. Well, if he has a lower baseline, that's not a negative thing.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily a negative thing, but there were no details involved in that report, so it was a little bit of a gray area at the time. But now the situation with him getting injured in preseason, which was, I think it was a groin injury, and there were talks about that being the result of him not being fit and not being in good shape. Yeah, that is concerning.
And what's also concerning, though, is that this is something that after this situation in 2019 with the clause, then we fast forward here to when the Rangers were in the bubble. If you guys remember, Vitaly, I'm pretty sure that he ended up coming to the Rangers when he had some personal family events going on at the time, like significant ones. I'm not exactly remembering what they were.
His sister got married. Yes.
Yeah.
He missed his sister's wedding to join the Rangers in the bubble, and he didn't play.
He didn't play a game. But
just to be with the Rangers for the bubble and practice with them, be part of the team.
And the issue here, though, is that that might have rubbed him the wrong way. Again, if you're a National Hockey League player, those are commitments that you're going to have to deal with. Every player goes through it between personal stuff with family that they have to not be able to attend to, unfortunately. But it also says in the article that Krassov also missed the bus from the team hotel to the rink one day in the Toronto bubble, which led to further frustration in the organization, according to multiple sources. So what was the reason for him missing? I'm not sure, but you could say there's a lack of preparation or laziness, if you will, just based on what we're seeing. But then what goes on further is Pavel Buchnevich reportedly looks like he was the one that was truly guiding the way for Krassov to help him with his adjustment. And Vitaly took it really hard, apparently, when Buchnevich was traded, which again makes perfect sense as well. Now, even going further beyond this between the conditioning, when Jeff Gorin and John Davidson were out of the organization and Chris Drury came in controlling everything, there was reason to believe that Vitaly thought, that this would be the end of his run, knowing that he's already rubbed up the wrong way to Chris Drury. And then he goes into camp, of course, has his conditioning issues. And now here we are today. It doesn't look like he's ever going to play a game for the Rangers again. So again, this is very much on Vitali. This piece further proves in my mind that his lack of preparation, his lack of willingness, and just not being able to listen at times either. It just not looking good all around, not going about things the right way. Chris Drury did not go about this the right way either. And I like to make that clear. There's a lack of professionalism on his part too, for him to make that remark. I think whether it holds true or not, at the end of the day, I am with you, Steven, that if you already have that clause on your contract, there's a reason why it's there. So whether you agree or disagree, talk about, a confidence booster. No, it's the complete opposite to tell your young former first round pick that he quit on the team the first time, that he's gained himself situated in North America. Like, no, that's a bad look too. So I think, again, as we said before, and there really won't be anything else that will be touchy on this until he is in fact officially traded, because he's back now in Russia until further notice. We'll see how long this plays out. There are some suitors. But to wrap this up, again, Krassov is at fault. Drew is at fault. This is just a bad look from both sides. You could say one's more than the other for sure, but I completely understand how both sides here did not go about things the right way.
Yeah, my issue with Chris Drury is, if you knew about all this,
thank you.
If all this was already happening, if all these issues were already surfacing, why did you not trade him over the summer?
And why the fuck did you trade Buchnevich? Why did you not add further winger depth to even replace maybe cheaper versions than what you have to this point? Because if Buchnevich was really a salary dump, okay. But there were other ways, to handle this.
There were reports, there were remarks that Buchnevich is being traded away to make room for the younger guys that need to play serious minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make a case for that being Kako. You can make a case for that also being Kravtsov. So you basically trade away Buchnevich. You commit to a player that as a general manager you are not fond of. You've already had issues with. You know how he responded 2 years ago when he was sent down. He activated his clause. He didn't have a clause this time. My issue with Chris Drury is that he should have known better. He should have seen this coming, and he should have acted before this escalated. Yes, it's on Kravtsov for acting the way he did, and Vitaly Kravtsov made it really easy for this fan base to blame him for the whole situation. Let's be real here.
Yeah,
Vitaly Kravtsov did everything to take the focus off of Chris Drury and the organization, and fans in droves were like, "Oh no, this is on the player," and I get it, but Vitaly Kravtsov made mistakes, but this wasn't solely on him. This organization has had issues with younger players for years. There was the Elias incident. There was a Ryan Grubb incident 2 years ago where he refused to report. The Kravtsov incident we've already talked about. Brendan Lemieux asking for a trade. Julien Gauthier openly criticizing David Quinn. Capo Kako criticizing Quinn, not understanding why he's being benched when Brett Howden can take penalties and never be benched. A couple of years prior, and this is not necessarily the same thing, but you could see this in the same pattern. There were a couple of guys that they brought over in Robin Kovac that they drafted in the second round. They brought him over at age 19, didn't adjust well in Hartford, and then had that car crash in Sweden. They terminated his contract. It's at some point you have to look in the mirror. At some point, this can no longer be 12 isolated incidents where it's all on the player. And in the salary cap era, the only three players I can name that actually developed as teenagers in Hartford are Artem Anisimov, I guess JT Miller, and then Philip Hedl. Because every time this debate comes up online, there's always someone going, "Oh, what about Hedl?" Okay, can you name one other player that actually went down to Hartford as a teenager and at that age actually adjusted well and developed into something useful for the Rangers?
Mm-hmm.
No, because it doesn't happen. The Hartford Wolfpack is a graveyard for prospects. It has been for the last 20 years.
And that's going to change. And I do feel comfortable in saying that as well. But the moral of the story, and we've talked about this endlessly, but they need to get better at handling these situations because there's simply no defending losing out not just on one, but two former first round picks since you started.
Back-to-back top 10 draft selections. You're
There's
just walking out the door for peanuts. You're trading
no justifying it.
Yeah, you're trading Leas for
players that fall.
Yeah,
even if the players that fall, then that goes in hand with your scouting, right?
Exactly.
You know, how long has this been going on with Vitaly? It's been his whole life that he's kind of had this kind of approach, if you will. Leah, similar thing. So one way or another, we can blame the players all we want, and they are at fault here. Vitaly is at fault, but this is still on the Rangers as well. And I think it's foolish to completely be only one-sided either way. They are both. This is a recipe of that has led to disaster here from both sides. And I really do. That's all I kind of want to touch on.
Yeah. So look at other organizations, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Detroit Red Wings. You could call them the sweet Detroit Red Wings at this stage with how many players from Sweden they've drafted the last couple of years. Not one issue. Nothing. The Toronto Maple Leafs
knows what he's doing. That's why.
Well, they also have a system in place with former players that know what it takes to get there, and there's a good safety net in there. I never felt the Rangers did enough. The Rangers just expected players to get it, and it's almost like they said, "Yeah, man up," and the whole man up mentality doesn't work.
And I'm curious. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this needs to be said. I'm curious how much, if at all, the Sather effect goes into this. Because let's not forget the Rangers going a decade plus with simply not developing anything. Like choosing not to, parting ways with your draft picks every single year, building a team that was already built upon a lot of players that have proven themselves either in the Rangers organization or with opposing organizations, coming in right away and making an impact. Could that be a factor in this all? Yes, I absolutely do think it's part of it.
Yeah, the only players that actually develop for this organization are the ones that develop elsewhere.
Yep.
Whether it's Adam Fox being drafted by Calgary, traded to Carolina, Ryan Lindgren coming over from Boston in the Rick Nash trade, or even our own draft picks. When you have a guy like Chris Kreider in college for 3 years, that's where he develops. A player that comes over at age 21 does not need as much developing as a player that you bring over at age 19. At that age, 2 years is huge. Now you have, and I didn't want to touch on this, but here we go. Kaapo Kakko and Alexi Lafreniere, who let's call it out. They're underwhelming for top 2 picks. They're underwhelming.
They're underwhelming versus what the expectation was for them from the jump. I agree.
Exactly.
Yep.
And there's no excuse. There is no, oh no, we missed this in scouting. No. You drafted the consensus picks at their spot. Alexi Lafreniere was the number 1 pick in the draft for literally everyone. Everyone. Kaapo Kakko was the number 2 pick for literally everyone. There was no debate. There's nothing to hide behind. If you look at that and then add it up with everything we discussed over the last 10 minutes, I cannot look at this and go, no, the organization didn't do anything wrong. No, there's something fundamentally wrong in this organization, and it starts at the top. And I don't think anything's going to change.
There isn't a day that this thought doesn't cross my mind. And this doesn't just go for these two individuals, but it goes for a lot of different players, for fans, teams that I follow. But how would Kakko look to this point with an opposing organization? How would Lafreniere look in an opposing organization?
Yeah.
Let's do comparison with teams with very similar skill sets, right? Or even teams that are fully rebuilding. I think there's a very good argument to be had that they would be flourishing and hitting the kind of promise that was originally expected since they were drafted already versus what they've done down in the Rangers organization. And again, this goes on David Quinn as well. This goes on JD, Jeff Gordon to a certain extent. This will go on Drury, depending on how these guys develop. A lot of factors go into this, and we have to be clear-minded of that too. It's not one specific thing. It's the whole thing as a whole, but the whole thing as a whole is the Rangers organization. So I'm not concerned about Kakko or Lafreniere, but I do think it's fair to have that belief that, if they start out somewhere else, they potentially be thriving more? Yes, they would have had more ice time from the beginning. Maybe they would have more comfortability. Maybe the market's a factor. A lot of different things go in hand, especially for a guy like Kakko when it comes to the market. I definitely think that was a factor given how his first year went, even though he played for like a year straight in Europe and now coming to the States. But
imagine him being in the situation Barkov was in, playing in Florida. There's less pressure. I think it's also the pressure of playing in New York, of course. But if you add it all up, it's too much for me to turn around and go, nah, there's nothing wrong here. I trust this organization. No. I think we were better off when we were trading our first round picks, to be perfectly honest.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I have more faith in players that develop elsewhere for 3 years. Let Brett Berard play in college for the full 3 years before you bring him over. Nils Lundqvist playing in Sweden for 3 years. Great. Those are the moves I would make. Lauri Pajuniemi, 3 years in Europe, yes. And yeah, the only example I can name, and everyone else can name, to convince someone that the Rangers are actually good at developing young prospects in Hartford is Philip Hedl. But it's Philip Hedl, and then Philip Hedl, and then another person says, yeah, what about Philip Hedl? But okay, who else? The Syracuse Crunch do this every freaking year. They turn undrafted players into stars.
I will say though, Steven, and because I feel like we might be getting a little too far ahead here in regarding, the Rangers lacking development in their system at this point. I think it's also important to give them time, knowing that this is still fresh over the past couple of years since the start of the rebuild. Yeah. So I think we should make it clear too. This is not us jumping the gun or anything. I have the utmost confidence in Kakko Lafreniere with the Rangers organization right now. And I also feel that the Wolfpack is in great hands for this year and years to come. The moral of the story that Steven especially has been trying to express here is that this has been a long time now where simply the Rangers haven't been running appropriately when it comes to developing young talent, and hopefully it changes. I'm confident. I do believe that is in fact going to happen. I think we need to get more leeway here, however, knowing that it's a changing of the times from going on being a decade plus straight of being a one-type mentality to going into the rebuild to now pushing away the rebuild, if you want to call it that, and going into now more so of this playoff mentality type team.
Yeah, and if you only win one cup, and I didn't want to go here, but if you only win one cup in 81 years, it's not bad luck. It's not, you're not jinxed. There's no curse. It's incompetence.
And that's why we have a bright future, no less, because a lot has changed from just what has happened over this time.
Yes, and
Steven, the Rangers are above 500, and we're talking about 1 in 80 years. Sound like an Islanders fan. Stop it.
You want to talk about win percentage? We are 7th in win percentage in our division.
We're amazing.
The only team under 500 in our division are the New York Islanders, who've lost both their games.
Wait, repeat that. I'm sorry.
The only team with a record under 500 in our division, New York Islanders, who lost both their games.
Love to see it.
There's a team in our division that is unbeaten. They're 100% win rate. The Buffalo Sabres. Nothing makes sense.
What do you mean it doesn't make sense? Everyone expected this.
Imagine if they get Eichel back, how good they'll be.
All right, let's not go there. All right, that's enough Ranger talk for now. We're going to be taking questions for the next 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will finish up this episode talking about the upcoming schedule and just giving our brief predictions. So, folks, for the next 10 to 15 minutes, if you're listening to the live stream and not a replay or wherever you get your podcast, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, because I know I've seen plenty throughout the live stream, feel free to ask away. We apologize for the negativity that was not purposeful towards the end of this episode, might I add either.
Because we care.
What's that?
It's because we care.
It's because we care. That is I agree with you. Yes.
People who don't care don't take it this serious.
Yes. The hardest critics in the sports world
are the most passionate.
Oftentimes are the most passionate. Exactly. And I am one of those because I am a very passionate sports fan for all my teams. Let's see. Did we break the Islanders on that last preseason game? We might have, Brody. I don't know. And we'll see how they do their next couple of games. I don't even know what the Islanders' schedule looks like going further forward. But they, never hurts to see them below the Rangers in the standings. We'll enjoy it while it lasts.
By the way, how refreshing is it that we play other teams this season, not just the same 7?
Oh, it's very refreshing. I think we said that last episode. Yeah. It's a nice. Yeah, I enjoy it a lot. I'm over playing, the same team 8 times in a season.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you guys think the Rangers will ever get a handle on the face-off problem? Yes, I do. I honestly do. I think that Gallant is doing a good job with them from what we saw in the offseason. I just think that, believe it or not, Ryan Strome has been a big factor into why the Rangers haven't done as well lately. I do think the Rangers are going to have some better games than what they've had in years past, face-off wise.
Mm-hmm.
To what length, to what consistency, I don't know. Because, at the end of the day, these aren't, Patrice Bergerons out there, Anze Kopitar's. We're not getting, even Claude Giroux's. We're not getting absolute studs in the face-off dot. It's the same guys. They just need to change their approach. And we've seen some of it. But since Ryan Strome has been out, you can clearly tell that the Rangers are lacking.
Yeah. Do you know the last time the Rangers finished with a positive face-off percentage a full season?
With a positive percentage?
Mm-hmm. Over 50% the last time?
It's during the Tortorella era.
2008, 2009. It's been over a decade since the Rangers finished over 50% on faceoffs.
Yeah, the Rangers didn't do shit with AV. I remember that much. So,
no, the last 2 seasons under Tortorella, they finished at 50, like 50.0, like flat 50. But
there's something about faceoffs and it being that kind of knit and gritty team. Better defensive teams, from what I've seen with the eye test, I'm not pulling out the numbers right now, they've been better on faceoffs too.
In the salary cap era, they had 2 seasons with a positive face-off percentage. 2.
Wow.
In the salary cap era.
That needs to change. Long overdue. But again, we're preaching the choir here. We all know this right now.
It's the players. It's not the organization.
Yes. I see some very nice comments here in the chat from George, also from Derek, just sharing kind words about the podcast. Thank you so much. We appreciate that a lot, guys. Which current roster player would you be okay with trading? I wouldn't mind Strome and Krassov getting traded for a better number 2 center. Krassov, I'm not really going to consider him a roster player right now. I'm going to take him out of this because obviously I'm okay with him being dealt because it's not like I have an option. It seems obvious he will be traded at some point. People on the roster I'm okay with trading. It all varies on what you're trading for. And that's a very broad question because for me,
it's anyone except Fox, Panarin, and Lafreniere.
Okay. Yeah. For me, it's Fox, Panarin, Lafreniere, Lundqvist, and even though he's not on the roster, I know I'm being a hypocrite, but Zach Jones. I don't want to see the Rangers play.
Oh, Sam Rosen missed a golden opportunity against the Dallas Stars, by the way.
Enlighten me.
There was a play where Shesterkin was out of his net and Lundqvist blocked a shot, and he didn't say saved by Lundqvist. Imagine in a couple of years when he actually grows facial hair, we can say shaved by Lundqvist.
My goodness. Brody with the $5 donation. Thank you so much for that, boy. Brody, I've really liked our 4th line this season. Feels good to finally have a 4th line. Thanks for the podcast as always, Tyler and Steven LGR. Yes, let's go Rangers. Thank you for the donation, Brody. Hi in the chat for Brody if you're watching this live stream. Yeah, it's been refreshing.
Kevin Rooney is one of the most underrated players on this team.
I'm liking Kevin Rooney more each and every game that he's playing. Not in love with Greg McKegg in that lineup. Got to be honest with you. Even though he didn't look terrible this past game, but I don't mind Ryan Reeves so far. I sure as hell don't mind Sammy Blais, even though that Blais hasn't been solely on the 4th line at all.
How about Dryden Hunt?
Dryden Hunt, I've been okay with. Hasn't wowed me yet. Let me put it that way. And that maybe I missed a player or 2. But Hunt's just been there from what I've seen. In my opinion.
But yeah, Kevin Rooney is really one of the underrated players on this team, and I'm still convinced. I'm going to believe for the rest of my life that he earned his protection slot in the expansion draft by the way he was making fun of Tom Wilson last season. That I will never forget that moment.
Oh, I stood up and did that when I was in Capital One.
Yeah, that moment is as memorable as Artem Anisimov shooting the Tampa Bay Lightning goalie. What was his name? Was it Garon? I think it was Garon. When he scored that goal in 2011 against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he had that, the rifle celly where he used
like Anisimov against
Anisimov, yeah.
Yeah, it's my favorite celly of all time. It's such a dick move, especially when you point it at a goalie or opposing player.
And then 2 months later in the All-Star game, Gaborik did it to Lundqvist when he scored in the All-Star game.
I know. I remember that. Yep. That was a little 2-on-1 and got him. Back when Hank could wear the C in the All-Star game, which was really cool.
Listen, the 2011-2012 team is probably the first team since the 90s that I really identified with.
That was my team. That was the first year I got involved with the Rangers, like daily. Yeah, I still get teary-eyed thinking about Gaborik's like triple overtime goal in DC. Man, it's just memories, sweet memories.
A couple of months ago, I rewatched the HBO Road to the Winter Classic.
That's a good one. Can't believe it's like a decade old already.
I know, it's crazy.
It is crazy. Ugh.
It is a decade. It's 2021. Oh my God, it's been 10 years.
Time flies. But we're not trying to get on a tangent. All right.
No,
maybe we'll do a separate episode just talking about all of our favorite Ranger memories. We'll do that one of these days. What should our lineup look like next game with Strome? Okay, with the assumption that Strome is in the lineup, what should it look like? If you're asking for our opinions, that's a different story than what it's going to look like. But we'll go with what our opinions are. For me, I would like the lineup to be. I'm gonna go Kreider left, Zibanejad center, Lafreniere right, second line, Panarin, Strome, and I'm gonna go with Sammy Blais. Can Sammy play right?
Look, Panarin made Colin Blackwell appealing to the Seattle Kraken, so put Dryden Hunt there.
Dryden Hunt, okay.
I mean, what's the worst that can happen?
That's actually a good point. Maybe I'll leave Sammy Blais for like the third line at least, because it's if you're gonna just have a filler anywhere, it's best to have it with the best player on the team.
Exactly. So Dryden Hunt on the second line, and then your third line would be Blais, Hedel, Goudreau.
Mm-hmm.
And then your fourth line could be Barron, Rooney, Reeves, with Gauthier being the spare.
Or having Gauthier playing, depending on what the matchup is. Because if it's Predators, do we need Reeves versus the Predators?
Not really. Yeah. I mean, a fourth line of Barron, Rooney, Gauthier, that's actually a skilled fourth line.
It's a bats line.
That could be interesting.
Yeah, so that's a line that could actually get a decent amount of ice time.
Yeah. So we'll see if Strome's back.
Yeah, for sure. We'll take like two more questions here, and then we're gonna give our final thoughts on the upcoming schedule with our predictions. Anthony asks, even though it's a joke, people joke about this. Do I think Tom Wilson really affected this organization? Yes, he did. But the point is that Wilson, that issue that took everything that transpired there was the breaking point for James Dolan. That's what it was. It wasn't solely on what Tom Wilson did, but all Dolan needed was one more thing to kind of push him over the edge, and the Wilson incident ended up being that. Wilson is the embodiment of all the issues the Rangers have had with lack of physicality. It's not just Tom. Matt Martin, Islanders. You have to look at your opposing teams in the Metropolitan as well that have caused issues in years past. That and Dolan's mindset, of which agree or disagree on it however you wish, is what went in hand with that being the breaking point for him.
Yeah. I don't think Wilson was the sole reason for the Rangers overhauling their lineup as drastically as they did. There were some games against the Islanders where the Rangers were outmatched. There were some games against the Bruins where they were outmatched. So it was more than that. But Wilson was the final straw, the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And I think it was magnified at the end of the season where Lindgren, Trouba, and Kreider were all out of the lineup. I think that just amplified it even more. But I think, but overall, this was going to happen anyway. I think they took it too far, though. We don't need Jared Tenori.
I agree. They want 1 to 2 signings too much this offseason.
And you're trading Brett Howden for a fourth to Vegas, and then you acquire Ryan Reese for a third. So I consider that a 1-for-1 swap. I know it's different rounds, but third and fourth round is basically the same.
In hindsight, I'm a little curious why they didn't do the trade 1-for-1 then.
Yeah, I don't know, but
was the one round that big of a difference? Like,
no, but sometimes this happens, and general managers come back later to finalize a deal they discussed earlier. It happened with the Boston Bruins and the Rangers in 2018.
Yeah,
they had the Rick Nash trade, but at the same time they traded Nick Holden for a third.
Mm-hmm.
The Carolina Hurricanes. How many trades did we have with the Carolina Hurricanes at one point? Like 4 in a 12-month span?
What about the Hurricanes again?
We had like 4 trades with the Hurricanes in a 12-month span, or at least it felt like it. We had the Adam Fox trade, the Julian Gauthier trade, and the Brady Shea trade.
Yeah.
3.
What? That was the peak of Jeff Gorin.
Yeah. Oh,
my goodness. He was Thanos grabbing every stone like with ease. He didn't even have to go through the battle.
I remember making the joke that turning Brady Shea into Braden Schneider reminded me of those old video games where they don't have the license, so they use generic names.
Yeah.
Brady Shea in that game would be named Braden Schneider.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. That's funny. All right, we got one last comment here, and then we're going to get on to the upcoming predictions for the next couple of games. I'm a bit late, says Anthony, but how much has Sammy Blais impressed both of you? I've liked Blais. Blais no Pavel Buchnevich, but I think what's most important to view Blais is to not even think about him in the spectrum of Buchnevich. Don't connect the two. That's how you're going to look down upon him. I think for what Sammy's brought so far, he has that good balance of kind of everything that you're wanting for this lineup right now. He has offensive ability. He has strong skating. He can even DQ out a little bit in the offensive zone. He's a big body that lets you know he is there. He lands big hits on you. Defensively, he's okay. So he's young, developed. He's dealt with injuries in his young career. I think as long as he stays healthy, he's going to really thrive in the Rangers system. And he's also a net front presence too. The Rangers can get creative with him if they do in fact want to utilize him more on the power play in front if need be, among other things. So so far I don't have any gripes with Sammy Blais, only positives.
Sammy Blais has been a positive for the Rangers. I think he needs to work a little bit on his conditioning. His shifts seem very short compared to other players.
Mm-hmm.
And look, if we would have acquired Sammy Blais for a second-round pick, I think collectively as a fan base, we're celebrating the trade.
Yeah. That's why you can't connect the two, as I said.
Exactly. But they're always going to be connected.
Yeah,
just like Scott Gomez and Ryan McDonough are connected.
You just need to do your best as a fan to appreciate Blais for what his role is here and not look at him as the Buchnevich replacement, because that was never the point from the beginning.
I mean, look at every time Brett Howden or Libor Hayek are mentioned, the McDonough trade comes up. Same with Nils Lundqvist. It's just it's human nature. Especially the notable trades. And it's a little bit easier when it's a 1-for-1 trade, like Philip Forsberg for Martin Erad. Oh my God. The Nashville Predators really robbed the Washington Capitals.
We don't need it.
And somehow it did not weaken the Washington Capitals one bit.
No.
Because I think when was the trade? 2016? Something like that?
Maybe.
2 years later, the Washington Capitals won a Stanley Cup anyway.
Yep.
So I don't think they care.
No.
but Ryan Johansson for Seth Jones. You know, people are going, oh no, the Predators gave up Seth Jones for Ryan Johansson. Well, they gave
That
up
trade
their
worked out for both sides at first.
they gave up their fifth best defenseman when they needed a center. I think it was a pretty good trade. It was like a win, one of the rare win-win trades.
And now they're both on bad contracts.
Yeah, but that's what happens when players get older.
Yep.
You know, now Sammy Blagh's been good for the Rangers. We'll see what happens throughout the season. I hope he can stay healthy because he missed the second game against the Dallas Stars with a minor injury. So we'll see about that. But
yeah, he was everywhere in DC. Like I said, he was just thrown around the body left and right.
I'm happy to have him on the team. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but he really looks like a young Rod Gilbert.
Who, Blais?
Yeah. There was a video during preseason where they had these they were doing like these quizzes with players, and it was Capo Caco, Kevin Rooney, and Sammy Blais. And at one point, Sammy Blais looks into the camera, and it's like dead on young Rod Gilbert.
Wow, I haven't really noticed those comparisons at all. I'll have to look at the photos side by side.
And if you're going to look for comparisons, Morgan Barron looks like a young David Quinn.
Oh yeah, no, they got the chin, the jaw structure, everything, yeah.
The eyes, yeah.
And they got everything. Oh my goodness, and he's oh my god, just think about if he went to Boston and didn't go to Cornell, it would have been something special. He would have been Brett Howden.
Yes. So who is Gallant's Brett Howden? Who is Gallant's Tanner Glass? Is it Greg McKegg?
I wouldn't say that just because we're so early into it. Let's wait 20 games. Okay. Write it down. Remind me when we're 20 games in, or roughly, whenever we're recording then. And we'll see who's gained favoritism that isn't necessarily deserving of it or is just somewhat controversial, because you can't expect the Rangers to not have at least one of these situations happening. It's the New York Rangers.
Oh, no, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
It's inevitable. We established that. But to wrap things up, let's get into the schedule upcoming for the Rangers. They got 3 games before we will be recording next. We'll be back live and doing our normal recording either on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, depending on it, whenever you're watching this or listening. But the Rangers got some big games, all games that are winnable. It's just a matter of if they will win them, right? They're in Nashville starting up this Thursday, the 21st. Then on Saturday, they are in Ottawa. Third time they'll be in Canada already this early season. That'll be a 1 p.m. Eastern time game. And then on the 25th, Monday, they will be back at home against Calgary at 7 p.m. So, Rangers.
By the way, the Predators game is at 8 p.m.
Yeah, 8 p.m. for Preds. So 3 games coming up, all games that the Rangers could win. I do not think the Rangers are going to win all 3 games, however, so I'm going to go with a 2-1 record for them.
Okay. I'm going to go with 1-1-1. So let me write this down.
Okay.
2-1-0 for you, 1-1-1 for me. Let's see who gets it right next week.
Okay. Out of these 3 games, which one do you think the Rangers are most likely to win?
The one against the Predators.
Okay. Yeah. That's
the game in Ottawa is going to be interesting for Lafreniere, by the way.
I think that game in Ottawa might be the kryptonite for the Rangers.
Well, yeah, true. But for Lafreniere, he's from Saint Eustace, I think. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's something French. And it's about a 2-hour drive from there to where the Ottawa Senators play. So it's basically it's not as close as the Bell Center in Montreal, but there's a lot of family and friends for Lafreniere that are going to be there. I think it's like 200 people or something.
Oh, that's awesome.
That game's going to be special for Lafreniere again. So let's see if he can do it again. Before we go, Alexi Lafreniere only needs 3 more points.
Shut up, Steven.
To be the highest scoring Lafreniere in the Rangers jersey.
Yeah, I literally cringe when I see your tweets. There's just something about the Lafreniere on Lafreniere that I just can't. Everything else I vibe with, but this is just too much.
First time since 1989, and Lafreniere scored for the Rangers in Montreal.
That's going to do it. That's
Funny
going to
enough,
do it for this one.
Jason Lafreniere is not from Quebec. He was born in Ontario.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense given his first name.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, out with Jason and with Alexi. And that's going to do it for this episode number 36 of Rangers Review.
Glenn Anderson. Glenn Anderson episode.
Wait, pardon.
Number 36.
No. Stop. My Zook poster is crying. You schmuck.
Do we have any other numbers 36 for the Rangers? Was Rumen and Dor number 36?
You would know.
Hold on. I'm going to look this up quickly and then we'll go. Now I need to know. By the way, if people really need to go to Hockey Reference, that their website's great.
Yeah, I agree.
They have sweater number registries and everything. I like that they call it sweaters still. Ben Ferrero, Dane Byers, Matt Barnaby, of course.
Oh, someone commented Barnaby in the chat. Shout out to Wendy. Yeah. We got it.
Yeah. David Wilkie, Alexei Vasiliev, Rumen and Dor, Pierre Savigny, Daniel Gano, another Ranger who scored in Montreal. Jeff Nielsen, Glenn Featherstone, Glenn Anderson, Todd Charlesworth, and Gord Walker in 1987 was the first Ranger with number 36.
I'm looking forward to the number 37 conversation when the time is there. Not now. Don't even start it.
It's only 12 names, so maybe we should
it's only 12 names.
Maybe we should make this a segment. At the end of the episode, I'll list the players that played with that number.
Okay, we'll do. I'm looking forward to it. All right, that's going to do it for this one, folks. Thank you so much for chiming in. Make sure to leave a review, leave a like, subscription, depending on where you guys are checking out this episode of Rangers Review. We will be back next week. Until then, let's go Rangers. Let's get a good couple games going, and let's get some consistency going. Get out of that damn penalty box. All right, folks, I'll talk to you soon. Let's go Rangers.